This podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Boonwurrung and the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders and acknowledge their connection to this land. There's no justice without First Nations justice. Welcome to Second City, a place where every week we'll be asking and trying to answer, if the first city falls, how do we want to build a new life together in the second city? I'm Sonia, a charity worker and political candidate. I'm obsessed with community and I want to pat your dog.
Oh, I'm Lerna. I'm a scientist and I work in medical research, and I love our natural world and the universe and just spending time with those I love with good food and drink.
I'm Alex. I'm a researcher and strategist, and I am fascinated by what makes people tick and how we can make things better for each other.
Beautiful. Good morning, ladies. It's Friday. Hooray, yay. Hooray, as we always say at the beginning of every episode. All right, so today we're going to talk about, a big, fierce, slightly scary subject, which is power. What does power look like in the first city, and what are we taking with us to the second city or leaving behind? So to get us started, who wants to speak to how we think power works at the moment on an individual level or collectively as a community, society?
It's like, what are we allowed to say?
Yeah.
After following this week's news.
Yeah, truly.
You know, it's just, how can you not despair at who are the powerful at the moment? It's like, you know, crime syndicates, seriously, you know. They're all into dodgy shit. They've all got dirt on each other, so they all protect each other because ultimately they're protecting themselves.
Lerna, you're talking about Epstein, right? That just hit the news.
Yes. You know, and it's all the powerful and the elite. There's a lot of them that seem to be involved or, you know, associated, and it's like...
Who isn't on the list?
Yeah, it's, you know, the media, you know, you look at New York Times, what they've been withholding, and it's just shit. The whole thing is just really shit. And these are our powerful people that run everything.
Yeah, nefarious networks of assholes.
Yeah, they're criminal syndicates. It's...
Yeah. Straight up.
Yeah.
In charge of the free world, it turns out, which is not so free. Yeah.
No, it's... you know.
I don't know whether I'm delusional, but I've got such a feeling that it's not for long.
God, I hope so.
Alex, say
I
more!
want to see it explode, Alex. Please, please.
Well, so I just finished reading Luke Kemp's book, Goliath's Curse. Luke Kemp is... a researcher at the Cambridge Centre for Existential Risk, and he's written this multidisciplinary kind of complex systems-y book, like that's deep history, the sort of thing that I would read for fun, even if I didn't have to read it for work. It is so good. Everyone should read it. Anyway, Luke's excellent
Luke's an Aussie, right? Luke's an Aussie,
He's an Aussie dude.
Yeah.
Who's just... living his best life in Cambridge at the moment, from the sounds of things. But so the thesis of the book is that why do civilizations collapse? There are, you know, these proximal causes like, you know, some climate catastrophe event or some other event, whatever. But ultimately, the more unequal a society is, the more fragile it becomes and the more prone it is to collapse. Beautiful. But his underlying thesis was so exciting to read about because it reflects exactly what I see in the research. And I wrote to Luke Kemp and I said that what I tell the folks at work is that we can make the broad division between the cunts and the sweethearts in this world. And when we do that, we go a long way to explaining why the sweethearts are so poorly served by the cunts who lead them. And what his book does is explain the evolutionary pathway for dominance, and that you've got a very small minority of human beings who have what they call, and we've discussed this before, the dark triad. They're high on psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism, these three dark triad traits. And even though they're a tiny minority, when you don't care about who you hurt in order to dominate, then, the world's your oyster in a lot of ways if you're smart enough not to get caught before you get a lot of power. So we see all these people protecting each other in positions of power because they all share a lot of these features, right? Epstein, Trump, like they're obviously not very nice people. But then you've got other people around them who are not necessarily high in all the dark triad stuff, but they're dependent on them for their status. And human beings are very social animals, and when you befriend someone, you become really loath to throw them under the bus or do something that would compromise them, because that kind of compromises you. And we can talk about like how we've seen that in our lives later, but that's just kind of my nutshell of it all.
So I would kind of call that thing that you said at the end there has been really interesting to me in the last 24 months of campaigning for an election, because what you've just described there I'd call basically peer pressure. I'd call like at some level they build alliances between each other, and then it becomes really difficult to contravene those. And when I get to the guts of what's happening in the Australian Parliament, the relationships and the money and the power that coalesces in the Australian Parliament, and you sort of dig around in all this debris and you think, how is it that policy is dictated by a donation of 80 grand? How are we selling our children's future for 80 grand? And we're not. I think we're selling our children's future because those relationships create this implicit understanding that we're all in this together, and that my power is predicated on your agreement that we're all in this together. And it's not even jobs for mates afterwards. It's just this whole thing when they talk about the bro club, but it's not just bros. The power concentrate, Ghislaine, right? It's facilitated by anyone who's in that little peer pressured cocoon where they all just prop each other up. Nightmare stuff. Ugh.
But the reason I've got optimism is because just on the raw numbers, the sweethearts are like, we're talking 80-90% of the population. The dark triads are at 0.000 something percent of the population, and then the people they surround themselves with who are then dependent on them for their status and power, it's only like a small percentage as well. So sweethearts might not have like the cunt in them, but we're still pretty smart, and when we work together, we see.
We've been telling ourselves stories about how we do that forever, haven't we? Our great myths are around overcoming dark triads.
Exactly.
It seems so difficult because that 0.01% control communication, control media, control the news, control finance, that whole world that keeps society existing and chugging along. And most people, as we have talked about as well, are just living and trying to survive every day, and they're not awake to how the system works. They're not aware of all this shit that's happening. So how do we get the 80 to 90% of the sweethearts aware of this and to come together and to bash it down like the Great Wall that Germans did back in 89 or whatever it was?
So here's my next bit of, I can't believe how optimistic I'm being today. I feel sick. It's not my natural state. The amazing thing I've been noticing is that even though they control information sources, they're still dependent on audience. So someone like Mark Zuckerberg might have all sorts of really gross political opinions and orientations, but his entire wealth is built on people agreeing to use his products. Even Elon Musk, who is just an open, out-and-out fascist, he can't control what's going on Twitter. He can't even control his own AI bot, right? Grok, right? And and things get past, right? Like the emergent phenomena of the complex system that is all of us just saying the same thing over and over. When and if we coordinate, they are powerless, even if they own everything. So, take Rupert Murdoch, for example. Everyone always assumes like he's all powerful. We've seen with lots of elections in Australia how like his power is massively waning. Where he created an illusion of power in the past was by being smart enough to get where public sentiment was and then pretending he was there all along with it. So he would support like Labor candidates and stuff in the past because of that. And then as he got older, he somehow lost that touch and just decided, no, he was going to force reality onto people, and it didn't work, and people just stopped consuming his shit.
Yeah. So I guess then that's where social media works to our advantage, because then this way we have the chance to show real-time, factual, real events, like how we see now, like coming out of the States with people fighting against ICE and protecting their neighbours. And so this is what we need to push to try and, beat the biased news networks and all those privately owned media companies. So we get the people to come along together with us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To change this power dynamic.
Yeah. Find our people where we can and get around it.
And get the sweethearts into power.
Get the sweethearts into power. That's right. Yeah. I mean, I do feel like that some of what we're seeing about the awful attacks on gender rights and on queer rights and all those sorts of things feel like that horrendous last hurrah of the old dinosaurs being like, I'm dying and lashing out and stuff, And it does feel like, I was thinking, and I think I've said this before, my kids wouldn't know a newspaper if it hit them in the face. They think it's for the guinea pig hutch. And definitely, who was that radio shock jock? Alan who? Who's that anymore? Just some old creep.
Guy who had to show up in court.
Yeah, that's right. Gross. That era is behind us. This is a new era. This era belongs to us. And I feel a little bit like you, Alex. I feel the hairs are prickling on the back of my neck with the growing awareness that I sense from the power holders that we're coming for them. Never before have I seen so many people talking about that inequality and how few people have so much at the expense of everything.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really good, because I feel a bit more cynical, or I guess more afraid. Like even when Zoran won in New York, everyone was rejoicing, saying this is fantastic, and I was happy. But a part of me still felt like I don't think it's going to change anything in the big picture. Like it's just a little pebble. I just feel like it's just too big, and there's too many forces, and for me, I just feel like it's just too big to break down.
Yeah.
It's like that old joke, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, yes, it's very big and they're very powerful, but we've seen empires collapse. We've seen collapse, right? Now, the Luke Kemp book tells us that if our globally interconnected global civilization collapses, we're fucked. So we don't want civilizational collapse, but reformation of power is obviously how we avoid that collapse happening, firstly. But secondly, it's things happen slowly, and then they happen really quickly. You see it with the colour revolutions in Eastern Europe. You see it, certainly in Nepal, in all over the world. And Zoran Mamdani doesn't need to kind of go back in time, have his parents give birth to him in America so that he can run against Trump for the presidency. He just needs to do his bit there to show other people that it's possible there, so that they do their bit there and their bit there and their bit there. And then before you know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just a very impatient person.
Well, and a lot's at stake. We're right
I want it to happen
concerned.
now. I want it to happen quicker. I want it to be really just happen now. I've had,
I know.
I'm with
you.
I
know. And there are heartbreaks along the way, right? Like yesterday or the day before, the Victorian Labor Premier announced that they were going to lock kids up for, a life sentence, 25 years, no parole, for violent crime. But nonetheless, the conditions of a child that ends up in that space, you can imagine, might be mitigated or prevented by other measures that she's cutting, such as mental health care, inequality fighting measures, anti-poverty measures. Stuff like that just really, it breaks my heart, because I feel like you're right, Lorna, it's taking too long.
Yeah.
It's taking too long, yeah.
And who's going to get beaten up along the way as well, while it takes so long? It says probably not great things about me that my favourite Twitter account is this dude called Dr. Rich Fellatio.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Thought I'd just chuck that in there. No, he's like an out-and-out genius. The best Twitter follow there is. I highly recommend it. And he's mostly just a shit poster, but every so often he gets serious, and he's wonderful. And he was like, he's been on a tear about locking up children in jails. They're like, do you think the children who commit crimes are there poring over the Age newspaper, understanding that there's these very sophisticated alterations to the carceral system, and therefore will rethink.
I know, that's right.
Their life of crime? You fucking idiots.
No idea. Yeah.
And they're not going to lock the kids up for life. What they're going to do is they're going to send them to adult jails where they learn
criminality.
Criminality at like the most elite criminal university possible, get utterly brutalized, and then come out and make everything even worse than it was before for the people who have been victims of crime.
Yeah. Also, I mean, overrepresented in criminal communities, especially young people who commit crimes, are serious complex trauma and ADHD, right? The two cohorts of people who really, really struggle with consequence as an idea, because they have an issue with time and time relativity. So the idea, exactly as you're saying, Alex, that your Twitter guy is pointing out, which is that this is not a deterrent. This is just a headline, nothing more than a headline, on a level that frightens me, because what it says is exactly what we've seen Gary's Economics talking about in the UK, that the far right drags the centre right further toward the right, which then only sends more people further right, and they don't vote Labor, because Labor aren't the solution to this problem. The Labor Party's only sending people toward the far right parties. They're not accruing more share of vote themselves. They're just moving the whole needle, and harming kids and families, the most vulnerable members of our society in the process. Sorry, that was clumsily said, but it matters to me.
No, but it's 100% right. And it's also really frustrating because I can tell people that they're not going to win any fucking votes from this.
No,
either.
That's exactly right.
The people in the groups who are like genuinely scared of the rise in crime in Victoria, and it's like there is an issue. Like we've got a hangover from COVID that is like there's obviously been a rip in the social fabric. But they're not saying like lock the kids up and throw away the key. They're saying like there's not enough services to fix kids who are obviously broken by something. People, again, the sweethearts are smart. Look at what the cunts are doing.
Yeah. I can't say the C word, but yeah.
I did something called... I did something with my mum that I called cunt therapy when I was a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
Because she couldn't say the C word either. And I said, well, just, like... desensitize yourself to it, like pretend like
I'm with Sonia, I can't say it either.
Cunt is the same as saying the word cap. Oh look, I'm wearing a cunt on my head. And so I had my mum just running around saying, I'm wearing a cunt on my head. And it was a moment of bonding for us.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah, but I'm like you, Sonia. What the fork? I can't say fork here.
I know. Okay. Yes, so I think, to summarise, I feel the same way you do, great cause for hope, but also great impatience at who are the people that are sort of being mowed down on the process, which I suppose is a part of the untangling and the rebuilding that is inevitable and that has to happen. Does anyone have any personal accounts of how we come to understand how power is wielded? What are your personal experiences?
I'm a petite woman. I'm short. And there is a huge power imbalance when you're small. You know, our whole society, I don't know if the whole world's like this, but Australia loves tall people. And there is real power in when you're tall. I'm a 52-year-old woman and I still get talked down to because you're this cute little girl, you know? That's one power imbalance that I absolutely hate, especially, God forbid, if you're a shorter male. Oh my God, does Australia have an issue with not tall men? There's a huge power problem there. So that's one thing.
I was pleased by the arrival of the term short king. I like that energy.
And then, you know, I'm not blonde and blue-eyed. There's another power imbalance in our country. Yep. No one takes you seriously because you don't look Australian. That's another personal issue with power that I have experienced. Those two things have been very, very dominant through my entire life.
Yeah, true.
Really interesting.
Were you a tiny wee little person at school?
No, I was one of the tallest girls in grade 6, but I'm still the same height. Through primary school, I had these kids, wog. It's like, these kids were born in England and they were calling me wog, and I was born in Melbourne. It was like, fuck off. I'm born here. Yeah, my whole life. And I remember my dad teaching me from a really young age in Australia, they will befriend you as long as you are of a status below them and your career and your standing in society is beneath them.
That's interesting.
And he taught me this very young, and I have seen it, but as soon as you become an equal or even surpass them, then they don't accept you.
That's very interesting. Yes.
And I have seen examples of that.
Yeah, that's paternalistic and gross.
That's Australian culture.
Yeah.
I worked on a political campaign where there are a couple of like very, very rich boomer Anglos who like they didn't know anything about politics, but I don't know, they thought they did. And they didn't like me because I think, you know, I'm a wog too. And like they liked me as long as I was like lower status as Lerner was describing. And then the second I wasn't, they were like much less amenable. And I started doing this weird thing where I'd wear like really obnoxious woggy jewellery around them, and then I got addicted to it and just started wearing my obnoxious woggy jewellery everywhere, and it's like, I'm going to take up space.
Good. Yeah. Because
I love this.
That is, it's almost, you can feel it. And an Anglo-Saxon person is blind to it. They don't know that it exists, because how could they? But I don't feel like I belong. And it was really funny. The very first time I went...
It's a full-on thing, isn't it?
I remember the very first time I went to... When I was like in my 20s, you know, backpack through Europe. And I went in... When I first landed in France, I was in Paris.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I feel like I belong here. People looked like me. You know, like they were my size. Yeah. They were my colouring. I was accepted. I wasn't looked at differently. And it was the very first time that I thought... I could live here. I feel like I belong. And this is another country that I have no genetic or anything, connection with. But I looked like those people, and they didn't second look at me. Like when you walk here, like, yes, we're a very multicultural country, but you're not Australian.
Yeah.
If you don't look a certain way.
Yeah. Where are you really from?
No, but where are you from?
Yeah.
So, horrifying moment when I was being interviewed by a journalist who was a woman of colour, and I said to her, "Where are you from?" Meaning, what publication are you from?
Oh no!
She said, "Do you mean what country am I from?" With a very Australian accent. Yeah. And I was like, what publication are you from? It was I thought about it days afterward. Felt so, but yes. I can't, as a whitey, imagine that experience, but I still find it shocking that in a country who prides itself on multiculturalism, that's not our story really, is it?
Yeah, I don't feel it.
So my experience of power is like really, like where I first properly understood it and learnt about it. Because I was too stupid to understand that I was dealing with it beforehand and was just blithely like pissing people off by campaigning around various things and just not understanding anything. And the first time the penny dropped for me was when I started doing advocacy with child abuse survivors. And I watched people who would consider themselves like really moral, good people tie themselves in knots to defend institutions and vilify survivors. Yeah. And you think, like, how is it even possible? And when someone has, for example, a rabbi that they really, really like, and that rabbi himself is not an abuser, but he's doing stuff to cover up the abuse. And yeah, just how power closes in on itself to protect itself in like all these ways you couldn't ever imagine. And you almost need to be like a bit weird and a bit autistic to like not be subject to it. And the only thing that stopped me sort of like naming and shaming like a whole bunch of people is Australia's defamation laws, because boy, is that where power lies here. If you've got the money to sue someone, you can get away with a lot.
Yeah. Yes, I was made very aware of that in the election campaign.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened?
Oh, in that we're heavily instructed to say nothing. Ever. Name no one. Even, and you know, I had people DM me stories about MPs that I could never repeat.
Yeah.
Much less put a name to, which was, the defo laws are something else, aren't they? I know the situation you're talking about, Alex, and I think there's a real secondary and sometimes greater trauma in not being believed or cared for after an abuse by your community and the people that you love. That's like a second injury to your spirit and your psyche. In my circle, and I won't be more specific than that, there's a young person who had suffered some abuse, and when the social services people came out and spoke to that child about the abuse, they asked the child, how can we repatriate you with the person? Because there was a relationship there, a familial relationship there, and it made the child feel as if, you don't believe me about the abuse, why would you put me back into relationship with my abuser?
Yes.
And I was very angry with the social workers involved, because that child then felt secondary, like this intense sweep of trauma again. So the idea of not being believed being almost sometimes a greater injury to your soul and your psyche than even the abuse itself, is really troubling. On an institutional level, I've encountered power as a political candidate for the Greens when Advance came after me in my seat. And you may know Advance, they're an arm of the Atlas Network, which is that terrifying group of think tanks in the US who have, behind them, they're like the Heritage Foundation, which is that US Project 2025 thing, funded by... Sorry, go on, Alex.
No, I was going to say funded by
fossil fuel, and whose sole objective seems to be anti-woke, climate denialist. They'll stoke fear in order to aggregate power for a select few and to try and lock in these power structures that we talked at the beginning of the episode. And here in Australia, they operate sort of under this Advance group, who are basically the right-wing GetUp. So they're a think tank that are a right-wing answer to what GetUp was sort of for the centre-left and the left. So they're the people that were behind the No campaign in the Voice referendum, who ran something like 8 shadow online groups under fronts, like with 8 fronts with different names targeting 8 different audience cohorts. They were very methodical. They went out with lots of money, millions and millions of dollars, pushing these misinformation, because of course lying is not illegal in political advertising, and so they can just say whatever they want. And they specifically chose 3 seats that the Greens were running in, my seat and 2 other seats, all 3 of whom were middle-aged women, and came after us in those seats, and ended up spending a lot of money in a range of other places too. I'm sure they came for everyone, Progressive, in the end. And so my campaign had times when we would have advance trucks with the big fluorescent lights just following us on door knocks. And, you know, door knocks are usually undertaken by very young women and sometimes older people who have time. And so it did feel like there was a real power discrepancy. These young climate, you know, people, kids who just want a good future for climate being targeted by
intimidation tactics.
Terribly intimidating, you know, with the trucks that have the fluorescent lights and they just follow you round, you know, up and down the streets while you're out there door knocking. Sometimes at dusk, you know, it was really intimidating stuff. And that for a period they bought the billboard above our office where we had our campaign office. They bought the billboard right above it with a nasty message about the Greens. But I had to laugh because my son's friend's mum told me when they drove past, hey, you know, love your new billboard. So I'm not sure whether the messaging was really doing its job, but still, it was strange to feel to be the beneficiary of such nefarious attention, even if only for a short period of time.
But see, like here again is an example of our power structure, where you have the government-appointed anti-Semitism, I've forgotten the name. What's the
Envoy.
word? Envoy. Whose husband is one of the biggest financial donors to Advance.
Yeah.
And come on, the government must know. And, you know, then this envoy is telling the people we can't protest for, you know, anti-genocide and Palestinians. It's just so intertwined and it's just
I remember reading. It's so big. I remember reading that their goal was not pro-liberal, it was simply anti-green. So they didn't care if they got Labor into power, they were pro-establishment. The status quo suited them all, which is why the government does nothing about this either. So when you say the government knows, yeah, of course, but it serves them to do nothing and to say nothing about this because, the groups like Advance, and I wonder then about Atlas as well, they're pro-establishment while the Dems are pretty establishment. We just saw them roll back, Democrats, we just saw them roll back on some incredible concessions to end the shutdown or whatever. It's like, what are you even for?
Yeah, those Dems are going to get primaried. Like, there's going to be consequences. You're going to see, like, because I have to pay, like, reasonably close attention. There's real energy in progressive circles in America to get rid of that old guard. I think there will be consequences. There's never not consequences.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you win necessarily, but nothing stays the same. Nothing. Not good things, not bad things.
Yep. Yeah.
And going back to Atlas, the everyday person doesn't know of its existence, doesn't know, you know, maybe now they would have heard of Advance because of the last election and they were everywhere. But I don't think the everyday person is aware of this stuff that happens in the background.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I don't think so either.
So a lot of people are paying attention to punters' politics because we hear in the groups, like people who are otherwise quite politically disengaged, they're consuming punters' politics. And for people who don't know who he is, he's a content creator who talks a lot about lobbying and how powerful interest groups get the government, whether it's Labor or Liberal, to pass laws that don't serve the interests of most Australians, but serve the interests of, powerful interests. So what I think, like the Atlas Network, they're just they're lobbyists on steroids. They're no different from other lobbyists. And so even if people aren't necessarily aware of Atlas specifically, I think part of our job is making people aware of lobbying more broadly and how just because there's bad lobbyists doesn't mean there can't be good lobbying countervailing forces. But we need to organise in order to do that. And you see successes when that happens, right? Like how many millions, hundreds of millions were spent by billionaires in New York to tear down Zoran Mamdani, and it didn't work.
And it didn't work.
It
so
didn't
true.
work because, and I knew it wouldn't work when I saw that he had 90,000 volunteers at one point, because you don't get 90,000 volunteers and then lose an election. You just don't. Because us on the ground, it doesn't matter what propaganda they put out. They cannot win.
Mm.
Okay.
That's encouraging.
It is.
Yeah. So how does power look different in the second city? Where has a negative force of power been overcome by something better? When has that shift in power delivered a better outcome?
You need the woke to win.
You need the woke to win.
Yes. You need your empathetic, compassionate people to be the leaders.
Yeah. It's another T-shirt for the website burner when we have one.
Yes.
It's about being informed about the dark triad and being just on the lookout for, like, who's showing a bit of Machiavellianism, a bit of psychopathy, a bit of narcissism. Who, like, if there's someone you really like and they're really charming, but they've done stuff to people that's made you think, that's a bit like, what are they willing to do? And just being aware of that, and then seeing where there's like groups of people working together to achieve outcomes that don't aggrandize just one person or one small group of people. When you've got that, that's when good things generally tend to happen. So here's an example that's not New York, even though, like, understandably everyone's obsessed with it who's like into politics at the moment. But in Nepal, the army decided they weren't going to kill the Gen Z protesters, but they got them together and they said, look, you guys have torn the system down, fuckwits. You've got to build it back up. So get onto your Discord servers and then collectively make a decision about who's going to lead us through this interim period. And because there wasn't any one dominant person, and they were all very serious about, this is not about aggrandizing one person, they chose a woman who was famous as a judge for going after corruption. And she'd done it, obviously not to self-aggrandize, but to just go after corruption. And they said, and she didn't want to be a politician, she didn't want the glory. And so that collective action that didn't look for glory and didn't look for status, but looked for an outcome that would serve everybody, led to a good outcome.
Amazing. Yeah. People not seeking glory and aggrandizement is a very good green flag.
Yeah.
People who don't want to do the leadership position but are willing to if they have to, if that's called upon. Yeah, beautiful. Which reminds me that we saw a lovely transition of power between the previous Irish president and his giant floofy dogs and the new Irish president, and both of them are utterly second city people, you know, not power seeking, quietly spoken, committed to having dogs at every single official interaction. Lerna, how do you see power in the second city?
Similar to when Jacinda Ardern was leader of New Zealand. You know, you want someone who leads with their heart, who, I know there was a lot of, you know, stuff that was not right in New Zealand, you know, at that time, but you need at least a compassionate person to lead and who brings, or like in Mexico, you know, you want to bring the poorer and working class up, bring them up, try and, or in Finland, you know, try and, you know, get rid of homelessness. You have to fix the societal problems first before you can work on anything else.
I think that's what Luke Kemp would say, right? Like that.
Yeah, I want to read his book, Alex. You have to send the info to me. And we should get him on our podcast.
We definitely should. So it sounds like that empires collapse when inequality gets too big and then the people become too disempowered. And what you want is never a situation where the soybean farmers have to trust a charlatan like Trump, who's, as we've talked about before, shafted them every which way.
So I've got one for how power works differently in a second city. So we've been sold this con since the 1970s, since fucking Milton Friedman became the god of everything.
Yeah.
That government is the problem, and if you just shrink government, then like the markets will sort everything out and private enterprise will sort everything out. Everything will be efficient and wonderful. And so the people who were determined to destroy government kept saying, look, see how fucked government is? Let us destroy it more. See how fucked it is? Let us destroy it more. See how fucked it is? Until there's nothing left for, like, people who need services. There's stuff we cannot do as individuals. We need the state to do it. And then you get a place like Mexico where they show, like, oh, no, this is government lifting up, you know, millions of people out of poverty.
Yeah. When the poor rise, we all rise. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like power of the past was all about brawn and strength. And then for a while it was all about brains and using your brain to make money. And I believe power of the future, or maybe what I mean is leadership of the future, will be about heart, like you said, Lerna, and values and integrity and authenticity. That's what I want for the second city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
For the short queens and kings.
Yeah.
Among us.
Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else to add?
I reckon that's a nice note to end on.
Yeah.
All right.
Let us dream.
Let us dream. Yeah.